We will be right back. Hi, good morning, everyone. Today we have sub-series regular Paprika-Girl, Riki. Thank you so much for joining again. And today your sensei, is it, for tea ceremony, Kumiko-san?
久美子先生はお茶教えてるんですか？はい。そうです。ご紹介してください。はい。日本語でいいね。私は四国の高松で生まれました。She's from Takamatsu in Shikoku. 母が、お茶の先生とお花の先生をしています。Her mother is a tea and a flower arrangement teacher. 彼女は今85歳。And she is now 85 years old. 元気で先生やっています。She's quite healthy and doing well. 小さい頃からお花とお茶を学んでいまして。So she studied tea and flowers ever since she was very small. 彼女の仕事を見ながら、いつも忙しい。見ていてもいやこれは絶対したくないという仕事でした。When she was younger, she thought it would be awful to be a tea teacher because her mother was always running around the house constantly in preparation for her classes. So she thought, I never want to do anything like that ever. 気がついたら、この仕事をしています。今に至ります。But unfortunately, here she is, and she's been doing tea now for about 50 years.
Wow, wonderful. Well, I love Takamatsu. I love Shikoku. I'm in Hiroshima, so I've visited Shikoku many times. And so now you've been in Tokyo, and Paprika-Girl said that now you guys are in your house tea ceremony room. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. She teaches classes over here in my tea house.
Nice. In Tokyo
Yeah.
area? Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And can you describe the wall hanging and things around you in the room?
例えばこの掛け軸とかそうどういう意味を持ってるんですか？後ろの。この掛け軸は秋の声ですね。満ちる。So this one on the right hand, or on the side over here, and you can see this. There's a close up of the kakejiku on my Twitter page this morning. I just put it up, but there's some writing on the side, and その何と書いてあるんですか？秋の声、番屋に満ちる。The translation for that is the autumn voice. 番屋に満ちるっていうのが。たくさんの野原にこう響き渡る。So the voice of autumn echoes over the fields. It's what is written on there. どんな絵ですか？鹿がね、野原に立って鳴いてる。You can see a male deer, which is called deer, right? A male deer, which is in the fields of grass, and he's calling for his girlfriend. オスがメスを呼んでる。So the guy is calling for the girl. Looking for a lover.
Yeah. And in tea ceremony rooms, do you usually have like flower arrangement? Because on your Twitter feed, I've really liked your flower arrangement. Or do you just keep that at the entrance?
Well, that's not a Japanese style arrangement. So the one over the entrance is just flowers that I find anywhere. But we do have flowers here. ここに花も飾ってありますけど、これ見せてもいいですか？どうぞ。I'm going to show you. We do actually have flowers here in back. ちょっとね、葉っぱがね、虫に食われてる。Unfortunately, she says that the leaves have been nibbled by bugs. But this is, you can see this is the flower that we have on display right now. どういう花ですか？これは秋の七草。So this is の一つ。This is one of the they call it nanaksa, the seven grasses, or seven leaves of autumn, and the name of it is called Fujibakama. So
I love that vase as well. It's quite nice.
この花入れも綺麗ですけど、どんな花です ですか？ひょうたんの形でね。So it's the shape of like ひょうたん, a gourd. そうね、どこのだろうな、信楽かな。She thinks it's possibly shigaraki. 母からもらったから。She got it from her mom, so she's not quite sure.
Lovely. And please describe your beautiful kimonos today.
今日の話をしてください。今どんなのを着てますか？これは一重着てます。普通は10月は合わせ流行分厚いの着るんですけど、ちょっと最近暑いので一重を着ています。So this is a tsumugi. It's called a hitoe. And hitoe is usually not worn this late in the season, but these days it's been very hot. So she hasn't quite made the switch over to the awase, which is more common right now. I'm wearing an awase. This one is made of chirimen material. And since it's not really that cold. It's actually quite cool, but it's not cold over here in Tokyo. So I don't have to wear extra sleeves or anything on it. So I use it almost like a hitoe. But it's very strange this year. I mean, usually you switch the kimonos based on, you can kind of say, okay, it's October, so now you can wear an awase kimono with 2 layers in it. But it's been really weird. So we had like 27 degrees or something yesterday. So it was like, I'm not gonna wear double layered silk and when it's 27 degrees outside. So yeah. 普通着物は時期に合わせて、着ないといけないんですけど、でもお茶ティーセレモニーは機能性動く、仕事をするワークユニフォーム、なので、だから暑い時は少し涼しいのを着てもいいよっていうふうに家元から言われてます。So normally, for something formal like a tea ceremony, you would have to wear kimono based on the season. So this is the season for hitoe or awase or whatever it may be. But because you move around a lot when you're getting things ready for a tea ceremony, getting water and you're hauling big old items and bringing tea and tea flying everywhere. It's a big circus getting ready for work, of course. So as a result, the head of the tea ceremony, which is the head of the tea sect is a really weird way to say it, but it says that you're allowed to wear a kimono which is a little bit lighter than what's usually expected for the season because it gets really hot.
That's interesting. Can you describe what attracts you to doing tea ceremony as part of your lifestyle? What is it? What is the appeal of tea ceremony for both of you?
So Sensei, I'll ask her first, but Sensei はお茶をやる意味は何だと思う？なんでお茶をやる意味がある？難しいね。Difficult question. 私はね、人を育てるのがとても楽しいです。She likes to raise people. She likes to bring them up. 習いに来ている人はいろいろなことを学びに来ていると思います。So the people who are coming, they all have their own reasons for wanting to study tea. 歴史を好んで、歴史からお茶を入りたいという人、あと着物着たいからお茶入りたい人。There are people who come because they want to study history, and there are those who simply want to come because they need an excuse to wear the kimono. あとテレビ見て、映画見て、かっこいい、それやってみたいっていう人。They'll see it on television and movies and think it looks cool. あと友達がやってて、ちょっと興味があるからやりたい人。Also, their friends might do tea, and that's why they've sparked an interest in it. それぞれ何を学びたいかっていうのは少しずつ違うかもしれません。So every single person they come to learn something just slightly different. でも私がやっぱり教えたいのは、お手前順番あります。So in the case of in the case of each one of the tea ceremonies, they're separate. There's many different kinds of tea ceremonies, but each one of the ceremonies has their own method to them. 順番を覚えるよりもやっぱり人との 気持ちの関わり方、大事だと思ってます。だから、そこにいる人、自分のことも含めて、どのように、人におもてなしをするか。だから、順番覚えなくてもいいんです、最終的には。そこにどんな気持ちがあるかっていうことを教えたい。学んでほしい。
So, but instead of worrying so much about the method, she's more concerned with the philosophy behind tea, which allows a person to spend time with one another in the same area and enjoy being together. So the omotenashi part, it's a very famous word in Japanese. The hospitality is a good way to translate that. But hospitality is a very, very major part of tea, and we're hoping that the people who come to visit it be able to experience this. And so that's more important to her than something like just what is the actual methods to it.
That's really interesting. I mean, there's a very long history of tea ceremony in Japan, which goes back to samurai times. Has it changed much over the years? Has it been kept the same traditional way?
お茶は大々的に昔から伝わっていくのにやっぱ変わってきたんですか？一番最初のお手前と最近やるお手前ってやっぱ変わりますか？
変わってます。一番最初はお客さんがいないところでお茶を立てて、それで喫茶店みたいに出してました。
In the very beginning, in fact, people made the tea behind behind the room, and then they brought it out the same way you would a cafe.
もともとはお茶は薬でした。
So originally, tea was medicine.
なので今でもお茶は1杯、2杯言わない。
So even now, we don't count the tea the same way we would a cup. In Japanese, for example, if we take a cup, we would call it ippai because you have one cup of the stuff that's full. But we don't say ippai when it comes to tea.
一服って言うんです。
We say ippuku, and ippuku is the counting number for medicine.
そう時々飲むのをトン服ね、言いますね。お薬何服何服って言います。
So that's how you would count a piece of medicine or some pill or something of the sort. You call it a puku.
なのでお客さんのいないところで立ててどうぞって出していったのを、だんだんお客さんの前に道具を運び出して、でそのお客さんの前でいろいろなことをして、道具を清めたり、して立てるところも見せる。その間にコミュニケーションが発生したんですね。それが一番今は大事なことだとなってます。
So, but slowly over time, what used to be people bringing out just the drink started to become more of a performance art. So that just like in other areas of Japanese food, they'll cook the food in front of you. Well, they do that to show how clean it is and how fresh it is, and those kinds of things. So part of the tea ceremony is cleaning and cleansing the tea item, to show them the item, how clean it is, and how all the care that's put into making it. It's a part of involving the drinker with the tea. And during that time, it takes time to do these things, to clean and all these other little movements that you do. That's not meant just to sit there and watch, actually. It's actually meant to, as a time period, to communicate with the other people in the room. So you'll notice, for example, that in the Japanese tea ceremony, there will be someone who's making the tea, but there will be the host and then there'll be the guest, because it's a three-person kind of a deal. And the host will continuously talk to the guest. That's what they're supposed to do, because they want to make the guest feel comfortable. And they'll tell them stories and all these other things while the chef is preparing the meal.
最初にお水だったお水を沸かして、そしてご飯を食べさせて、でお茶を飲むっていうコースがお茶事っていう4時間コースがあります。
It's actually a very long version a long course of tea, which is called a chaji. And a chaji is not just a simple mix the tea and go kind of a thing. It's 4 hours long. So involved in that is you have to actually boil the water. You give them food and sake and all sorts of things that there's a set menu that you give to the people who are involved in this. And then you also have tea and then sweets at the end as well too. But it's all for the sake of hospitality.
そのお茶事、4時間のお茶事が究極のおもてなしになります。
So that is the highest form of hospitality, highest form of omotenashi.
そこのお食事の時に一緒におもてなしをする方とお客さんがお酒を飲み交わすんですね。
So they drink a lot of sake at these lovely functions. And you not only are offered it by the host, but you give sake to the host as well too. So they get to drink quite a lot too.
ですから、本番のおもてなしはお酒飲んでもうベロベロになってお手前をするんです。
So in such a situation, one of the fun parts of a chaji is that the host he gets drunk before he makes the tea. So then he'll sit in front of the tea and he'll be quite drunk while he's making the tea. That's the whole point of it.
皆さん勘違いしてるんですけど、お茶事っていうお茶の時はいろいろ話をして笑ったり踊ったりしていいんです。皆さんじっと黙ってってやってるイメージあると思う。ちょっと違うので。
So there's an image of tea being something where you sit very, very strictly and you make sure your kimono is just on perfect and you try not to make a peep and something like that. And it's a very strict kind of an environment. But in actuality, that's not what tea is at all. Tea is supposed to be, especially in the case of a chaji. You get drunk, you dance, you tell stories, you laugh, you enjoy the time that you have together. And that is one, even though it is a ceremony and there is certain elements to it which make it a chaji as opposed to just a drinking party. The fact is that it's not supposed to be something that makes people uncomfortable and feel like they're tight and in a it's kind of a stiff environment. It's not supposed to be like that at all.
There seems to be a lot of important mannerisms in terms of how you pour the water, how you whisk the tea. Could you describe those and maybe give us an example of how you're supposed to hold your hand or?
じゃあ例えば先生いわゆるお茶に立てるときはどんな仕草っていうこと、どんなポイントをなんだな、どんなポイントを強調すればいいですか？
立てるとき。
そう。例えば男らしさとか
So, so like when you're watching tea ceremony or as the observer, it looks like it's almost like a dance. It's like a performance because when you pour the water from the hot water pot to the cup, it's very delicate. Is that something that's taught?
Well, Kumiko is probably going to explain this as well too. There is a set. I always think of it as a dance. That's because I've studied Japanese dancing for about 10 years now. So for me, everything is a pattern. It's a particular dance for one otemai. But you're taught, for example, to always dance like a man. So you're not, in a sense, you're not supposed to put any, even though it's not usually, it used to be a men's profession to make tea. But these days, it's more, I would say about 50% women these days. So you're supposed to be as simplified as possible. So you're not allowed to be elegant in a way. So the way that you would hold your kimono, for example, in dance is a no-no in tea. So instead you be very sharp to it and you move very quickly. And the whole point of having steps to it and movements to it is that you're getting rid of the excess muda, the excess time, the excess, you don't want to make a mess. You don't want to make everyone wait too long because the tea has to be served at a certain temperature and there's all these little reasons, but each one of the movements is very purposeful. You never do anything for no reason. So that's why everything looks so precise because that's the way it has to be in order to be logically performed.
だからお茶についてどういうお手前を作るときはどういうお手前は気持ち結局ね私綺麗でしょかっこいいよねって見せてしまったらノーです。一番いいのが気がついたらお茶が立ってて出てきて美味しいなあれそこ誰が座ってた誰が立てた 自己主張のないお手前が最高です。
So the ideal otemae, the ideal tea ceremony, should almost be as if, well, to translate it from the beginning, she was saying that you're not allowed to appeal or show off the fact that you're making tea. So whoever's making the tea isn't doing it for the sake of performance per se. So they will be watched, of course, because that's what, it's interesting to watch and it's beautiful. But they're not doing it so that it looks beautiful per se. They're doing it so they're the ideal tea practitioner and the ideal tea ceremony should be performed in a way that the person comes in, makes the tea, disappears, and suddenly you have a tea bowl in front of you. Where did this come from? That's the kind of impression you're supposed to leave on the guest, ideally.
I think a lot of visitors who come, of course, they want to try tea ceremony, but it's kind of a stressful time for many international visitors or residents who are trying tea ceremony for the first time. And there seems to be a lot of rules. You have to sit this way, you have to turn the bowl 3 times. So if someone is joining a tea ceremony as a visitor, as a first-time visitor, what would be some advice you would give them?
例えば、何か一度もお茶をやったことない人、だけど体験してみたいですよ、お客さんとしてね。どういう気持ちで行ったらいいですか？どういうルールフォローすればいいですか？っていうことを、本当にもう外人でも全く見たことないようなやつらでいいことか見たりとかしたら、どういう気持ちとして帰りたいですか？
美味しいお菓子と美味しいお茶を食べたいなと思ってくればいいと思う。
All that you have to do is drink the yummy tea and enjoy the sweets, and that's it. Don't worry about it. It does happen a lot. I started tea originally because I was interested in the history. The history of tea is absolutely amazing, and it was the collection of tea bowls and items that's what really got to me in the beginning. So to have a tea bowl in your hand, which is 400 years old, and enjoy holding that and the feel of it and the thought that you're now a part of that tea bowl's history forever, was just absolutely amazing to me. So when I started, I didn't know any of the rules. And so I went to maybe 5-6 years of tea ceremonies, just being invited by people, just following what everyone else was doing. But on the other hand, there are people who start just with the rules. They don't know the history yet. They're just doing it because somebody told them to, and now they're starting with the rules. And they do get scared off by the rules. They do get scared off by all these things you have to remember. And it is overwhelming if you start it from that kind of perspective. But you're not, the thing about tea is that you're not really expected to learn them and memorize them right away. I mean, you have to focus on them as much as possible, but there's so much more to tea besides the rules. That's what Kumiko is always teaching in class, how it's not, yes, you do have to learn the right way to put down the tea bowl and pick up the sweet and the timing and stuff. You should learn that, but you learn it from watching others. You don't learn it from a book. And as a result, if you go with that kind of an emotion to it, so it's like, don't worry about it. Don't be so concerned about whether or not you're turning the tea bowl in the right direction and things like that. That's not what a guest should be feeling in the first place. If they are feeling like that in the first place, then that's a bad tea ceremony. They should be feeling welcome. They should be feeling happy to be able to look at the person next to them and copy them and not feel pressured to be any one way as a guest.
That's wonderful advice. Molly has just joined us. Thanks for joining, Molly. She says, I'm going to my first tea ceremony at a friend's apartment on Friday. She's in America.
Oh, アメリカにいるモリーから今コメントが来まして、金曜日に初めてのお茶会に来ますよと。アメリカで。Oh, すごい。
That's wonderful. Yeah, whenever I go to tea ceremony, I've been so many times over the years. I've been in Japan almost 30 years. I always try to appreciate the room, the minimalist room, the hanging, the wall hanging, which always changes. And then, of course, watching the gesture and how the tea is made and boiled and whisked, and just appreciating all of the motion. And then, of course, when the tea is served, I try to appreciate the bowls and how the bowls are different and admire the pottery of the bowl usually. And then, of course, the taste. I really like the taste of strong green tea. So it's as long as it's not, for me, as long as it's not too long. Like for me, anything over 45 minutes, anything under an hour is probably good for me. I have trouble sitting in Seiza for a very long time.
45分まで超えちゃうともう聞こえないよね。
I know. The first time I came to Japan, I went to tea ceremony. It was over an hour. And I was watching everybody and I was trying to sit in seiza on my knees and I couldn't move my leg after I got up. It was painful.
I think we all go through that. I remember when I was the ideal tea ceremony is if it's a three-person kind of a deal, it's only it should be about 10 to 15 minutes max. But when you go to a big tea ceremony, there will be 30 people there or something like that, and you have to wait for everybody to get their tea, and it will take you an hour on occasion. So the first time I went to a tea ceremony over in Daitokuji, I think there were various reasons, but the tea ceremony did take an hour, and I remember I just started to learn. Just started to learn. She knows what I'm talking about. And I was like, I sit there for an hour, and after a while, you stop feeling your feet, and everyone after you're done with the tea ceremony, you go over to look at the bowls and you look at the kakejiku and kind of admire and ask questions from the host. I could not move. I was there for maybe 5 minutes. 動けなかった時期は何もあったんですよね. I was just sitting there in the corner, like stretching out my feet, like, oh my god, I'm gonna die. And like little ladies would come up to me and say, "It's okay, it's gonna get better. Don't worry, it's your first time, isn't it?" So, well, but it was very hard for me to do that in the beginning, but after, a year or so of continuously going to tea ceremonies, it doesn't bother me anymore. So it's not as bad as it used to be. So you'll get used to it, but an hour is really long. That's not
an hour is long. Molly says, I made her a tea set for Christmas. Oh, that's nice. So you can go enjoy it together. Now, I noticed, Paprika-Girl, you and your husband had a little cute interchange because he was on a work trip and at his hotel had a tea set. And so you made some at home and shared photos with each other. And I thought that was so nice. So you really incorporate the tea culture into your modern life. I love that.
I think that it was partially it was because of tea as well, but tea, I mean, it would not be a stretch to say that everything that we know as foreigners, for example, about Japanese culture and we admire is actually rooted in tea. Because let's say you want to study shuji, you want to study the calligraphy, for example. You have to study that in order to be able to read what's written on the kakejiku, right? And you have to be able to write it too, because you have to write responses. And so in order to write the responses, you have to use the seasonal words. They're called kigo in Japanese. Seasonal words. And these flowers, the flower arrangement, what kind of flowers can you use and why? What does it mean? And everything, like even the structure of the room, for example. Why does it have so many tatami, and where do you sit, where do you stand in relation to the door, in relation to the window? Why is this considered beautiful or not considered beautiful, whatever it may be? All these things are somehow rooted in tea. They're all connected in there somehow. So little by little, I've been here for 18 years now, so you study all these, you hear these little things like how to put on a kimono, or something about tea ceremony, or something about bowing in the right way, or those little tiny things you pick up over the years. They all seem like random bits of information until you start studying tea. Suddenly it all makes sense. It's like, oh, so that's what it is. And then the rest of it just kind of comes naturally, because your entire life will kind of bind it all together as a result of studying tea. So it's really interesting how that really changes your life and really affects the way that you live on a daily basis. So.
That's really interesting. And it's interesting to me how you say it's only 50% of women and men. It's 50-50 who do tea ceremony, because whenever I've seen tea ceremony club at high school or even university in Japan, it's all women. Whenever I go to a tea ceremony and have the tea, it's all women. I never have seen, and I know some of the most famous tea ceremony people are men, the sensei. But I've never actually seen men making tea in tea ceremony myself.
Um, well, I guess, it always depends on where you are and, who you hang out with kind of thing. But here in Tokyo, Sensei's, I would say half of her students, at least 40% of her students are dudes. Um, you have a lot of young people, especially young men, are very common to see because, a lot of them, oh goodness, they come for different reasons. But some of them want to wear kimono. Some of them want to do something Japanesey for the sake going abroad. Other people are chefs, for example, and want to make chagashi, or they're artisans of some sort. I first learned tea from a man. So when I was in the very beginning, when I went to Kyoto, the person who first introduced me to the teacups and why this is important and where you're supposed to sit and why you can't wear that and things like that. You know, he taught me was a very strict and yet very famous and respected Kyoto tea master, and he was a dude, and all his friends around there, of course, were dudes except for like a few people, and it was so. I think it really depends on where you are, maybe. どの、どのエリアで、やっぱ男性の生徒さんが今いるんですかね。うちは多いね。多いのかな。うちは7人かな。男の人ね。So, so in a week, maybe she'll have maybe 20 students come in and out of the tea room. Just that at the moment, she has seven men, which come of all ages. So you have the older dudes and stuff. But I think one of the reasons that women are more common than dudes is that dudes, it's still relatively traditional in Japan. I mean, dudes working and wife takes care of the house and stuff. Well, she gets to do whatever she wants. Once the kids are out of the house, especially, I mean, she's got free time. So what's she gonna do? She's gonna there's a beautiful Japanese word. It's called onna midaki, and it technically the technical translation is polishing feminine side, polishing the woman. So it's something that women do because they love beauty and they love kind of primping on occasion. So there are more women who do those kinds of things because it's an essence of beauty that that you can learn at any age. You can be involved in any age. So that would make sense for more women to do it than men. They have more time to do it. So maybe that's a thing. I don't know.
The photo you sent me of both of you in really beautiful formal kimono. There's a man with you. Is he one of
Oh,
your teachers?
no, that is the head of the Ura Senkei. あれだ、大蔵省の、3人ショットっていうことを送りましたんですけど。 So we were in Tokyo. We were doing something. I think it was for the New Year's. We were visiting the Jinja for the New Year's, and just by chance he walks by right in front of us, and we're like, and Sensei's like, and she panics. She's like, "Oh my god!" And she goes, and she just disappears, and then she comes back. She goes, "Oh my god!"
Because
So
he's famous? He's quite famous?
there's different sects
Okay.
of tea. So there's the Ura Senkei, Omote Senkei, and then there's Mishano Koji Senkei tea leaders, And the oldest one and the largest one is Ura Senkei, which is the one that the teacher, Kumiko, teaches. But the Daisosho, he is 97 years old. He is the very head of the largest and most successful tea branch there is, and he's extremely famous. Of course, he's the teacher among teachers. You don't meet him, you just can't meet him. But he's a very, very amicable and kind person. His English is fluent. He goes around the world promoting tea. And so that when he walked in front of us at that moment, she just went, and she goes, wah! And she's gone. And so we got a picture with him and spoke with him. And very kind gentleman, very dandy, is dapper, kind of a older man. But yeah, it's one of her highlights of her life, she says. So
Nice. Let's talk a little bit about housekeeping because I'm sure both of you guys have some wonderful Japanese housekeeping tips. Um, you were talking about dustkin and renting floor mats and dusters from Dustkin, and then when guests come, you have a tea set that you serve them. I'd never really heard of people doing this, but there's a nice idea.
oh well, it's a very standard thing. You might, if you went to Takamatsu, then you would see it. Or if you go to, hold on for 1 second. I need to readjust my seat because my feet are falling asleep. Excuse me. But yes, the uh, you will often, if you go to a more traditional, um, maybe for example a sweet shop, or if you go to a kimono shop or something like that, or if you go to somebody's house, they usually offer refreshments. And the refreshments, it's a set kind of a thing. You'll have tea, you'll have some 2 or 3 sweets based on how many people are in the room, of course. And it's always on an obon, so it's a tray which you bring out. And these, what kind of cups you'll bring out and the teapot or whatever it is, it very much depends on the season. But that's something you're always going to bring out, no matter who comes. So even if someone's going to come and look at your house just to see what kind of housekeeping you need, you have to give them tea. This is just part of the omotenashi level of, it's standard omotenashi in Japan. So um, I have a habit. I don't use a housekeeping service on a general daily basis because I kind of enjoy cleaning. It's not, it's kind of um, uh, meditation kind of a thing for me. I like to know that my house is clean, right? But I do use Dustkin once a year, and Dustkin I think it's all over the country. It's a very popular cleaning service, which which does spot cleaning. So your restroom, your bathroom, and then your toilet, and then your kitchen, those are areas that you need to keep clean constantly. But since you use water there, of course, there's mildew and mold and things like that. So I have them come in maybe once a year just to scrub it, kind of a prevention thing. So I don't want any mildew or mold to ever get into my house, ever. So I like to have the professionals come in there and just really scrub it. So
Wow.
since I moved to this new house about a half a year ago, I want to plan for the end of year big scrub so that so I had them come in and take a look at it, and um, it's very inexpensive considering what they do. So I
Yeah.
think it's fun.
And your beautiful rama at the top of your room and you're dusting it. I love that. Is that in the room you're in now?
Oh yeah, maybe I can turn the camera. I don't know if I can see it. There we go. That's it, Amma.
Gorgeous.
There it is. Unfortunately, these are less and less common these days, because it is kind of a pain in the butt to have to clean it constantly. But they're all handmade, and they're old and they're wonderful, and I don't know, they're so individual. Each and every one is made differently,
Yeah.
so you'll never get two of them which are the same thing.
That's gorgeous. When I talked to David Stewart, who's a filmmaker, the other day, he did a short documentary about a ranma maker and how he was learning the trade from his father and keeping on the heritage. I hope it doesn't die out. It's such a beautiful thing. Let's talk, which I think is connected also to tea ceremony, about your mismatched dishes.
Oh, those things. Yeah. お皿の話になりますけど、in okay, but as a foreigner, when you first, in America at least, and most of Europe, you have china sets, right? There's the good china, and there's the everyday china, and there are these sets that you have to have. And if you have yellow place, then you have to have matching bowls, and it's kind of a very specific set. And you'll get a set of something for like weddings or something like that, as or anniversaries, or maybe it's a family heirloom sort of thing. But when I came to Japan for the first time, I was interested to see that when you go to a restaurant, you'll notice that each one of the dishes, they don't match in the traditional way. it's like you'll have something blue for a cup, and you'll have a brown plate, and then you'll have a light yellow, like a tiny dish or something on the side. And it struck me as very interesting. Of course, it's very visually interesting because you're constantly looking at the dishes and checking and why do you use this color for this particular food. And plating became more interesting to me too because you don't just put food plop onto a plate. You have to put it with a little garnish. And it has to be with certain kinds of colors in it and stuff. So they're very picky about the way food looks. And if you extend that, you'll realize that the entire plate is designed, or the entire plate is in like a one serving for one person, is designed to be visually interesting from the beginning to the end. So it's not just about the food, it's also about the feeling and the interest of a person who's looking at the table, at the place in front of them. So over time, I've started to learn to balance out the colors properly. Well, there's ways to do it, but to balance the colors for the season, for the food, whatever it is that you're preparing for a person. In order to do this, you'll start looking around to find interesting plates and find plates that you think that will make someone feel happy when they get to the bottom of it. They'll look at the bowl like, oh, this is gorgeous, or something that will flatter the food. If you have a nice long fish that you're going to give to someone, well, you don't have to cut it up into pieces or put it on a big round plate. You put it on a nice long plate that suits the fish. And I don't know, it's really fun, especially if you're one of those people who likes to collect plates and things like that.
Where do you get your plates and bowls? Do you pick it up at flea markets or like pottery shops or
Everywhere.
everywhere?
Market and I'll see someone's grandma's bowl. It was perfect color, and or I'll go to. I've been to Asakusa a few times. They have quite a few plates and bowls made over there. I'm picky about them being made domestically, so I always turn them over and double check. Are you actually made here in Japan? And if they are, then I'll buy like 2 or 3 of them here and there. But they're inexpensive, so you don't have to buy a lot of them because you don't need a set per se. So just buy 1 or 2, and then eventually you amass a collection. So.
Lovely. Let's talk about your engawa. You just had your engawa redone.
Engawa no hanashi. Yes. Okay. Well, fortunately I posted this on Twitter, and somebody was so kind to point out that among the category of engawa, this is particularly called a nure-en. And the nure-en is the outside. It's quite literally the engawa that can be gotten wet. It's okay to get it wet. That's what it means, technically speaking. But the outside is like a teeny little porch. So it's a porch just outside of that entranceway. It goes into the garden, but from the garden you can get directly into the tea room that way. So you don't actually have to go to the front door in order to get over to the tea room, as long as you have one of those engawa for them to step on. So the engawa is kind of like a teeny little short porch for people to sit on. They can take off their shoes on it. They can have a cup of tea while sitting on the engawa and enjoying the autumn breeze, or play with fireworks, for example. It's very popular to see kids in old traditional movies where they have a little firework, kind of a sparkler thingy, and they're sitting on the engawa with their family and enjoying it. But it's an element to a traditional Japanese house that a lot of more modern houses don't have them, but we didn't have one on this house in this direction, so it was very nice to get one of those in there. And it's hinoki, so it smells really nice. Hinoki no kaori wa okay.
Good smell.
Good stuff. So, yeah. Goodness, 10月といえば何でしょうか。
のコキ。
ボビとかその季節の話。Well, I think at the very beginning of this month, I did have a otsukimi party. お月見ありましたね。
日本のことか。
そうそうそうそう。全体的な季節のものです。There are a couple of things that happened this month. We do have the moon viewing ceremony.
実りいろいろなこう収穫。ハロウィンの人。
そうだね。
かぼちゃとかお芋とかいろんなのができるから、それを神様にありがとうっていう。1月すごいね。
So what you'll have a lot of in October is parties for Thanksgiving, essentially. So of course, you'll have Halloween, which was I think originally when it was it England? I think England or something like that was started it with they have the people would dress up as it was a memorial day for the dearly departed. And people would dress up as ghosts or something like that and go from house to house. If you were like you didn't have any money or anything, you would go to house and ask for food because they would give it to you in remembrance of their dead family from like way back when. So this may be grandpa coming back asking for some alms or something like that. So they would give people food and sweets and snacks in remembrance of that. And it was kind of a festival back then. For a similar kind of a thing in Japan, you have a lot of Thanksgiving. You think of the past and you thank your ancestors for the fact that you have rice to eat right now and you live in a nice house right now and the fact that they brought you up. So it's not the same as Obon, but it has the kind of a similar feel of Thanksgiving and everything that they do. So there'll be a lot of festivals with pumpkins and there'll be a lot of displays of gourds and those kinds of things, things that represent abundance and autumn delicacies. Those sorts of a theme of parties is very, very common.
And then you say here also a lot of people have the feeling of rushing to accomplish something before the end of the year.
Ah, yes. Pretty soon. Also, this is also in tea, but this is actually quite the month. This in the next month is Shinnen, right? So next year is considered the beginning of the tea new year. So this doesn't just have to do with tea, but it does influence regular society and the fact that there's going to be a lot of people which are going to be cleaning out their cupboards. So they're going to go through and they're going to get rid of clothes that they've destroyed during the summer, or whatever they haven't used. They'll clean a lot. So a lot of people will be like dusting their houses on the inside and outside and buying new things, getting rid of the old. It's almost like another December in a sense. But you're doing this early because the weather is nice for one thing. It's just better to do it now than in December. But also they start to realize, oh, wait a minute, you only have a couple more months left until the year is done. Is this the way you want to end the year? So people will spend this time going, well, like I said, like cleaning and everything like that. But it's also because it's still nice weather, people are starting to jog a lot more. You'll notice that people are over in the park. There'll be a lot more joggers than there used to be. There'll be a lot of people which will start tea now, or they'll start something new now. So if they're going to start to write a book, or if they're going to start to, I don't know, learn an instrument, you'll find it happens a lot in October in Japan. So there's some people starting in the spring, but this is one of those other second springs when people start realizing, wait a minute, time is passing, and oh my God, what am I going to do? So that sort of a feeling comes out right about now. It might be rooted in tradition, but you'll notice it's kind of prevalent in general Japanese society.
That's really interesting. And I think the seasonal change is also when a lot of people start feeling a bit ill or not feeling well because of the temperature change. And you introduced good foods for keeping your immunity or gut bacteria.
Oh, yeah. Do you have a list?
I have a list right here, yeah.
I always have a list. I have a notebook which I carry around with me, and I'll check off things that I did during the day, especially things that I wanted to do, resolutions and things like that. I'm going to eat something healthy every day. I'm going to go for a run every day. So I'll check off all these things. But one of the things that I've learned over time is to be thankful for living in Japan is a lot of the foods are hakkou shokuhin. So you'll have things which are fermented, a lot of it. And that's apparently very good for your innards, in a sense. And it's good for your health, not just the vitamins and minerals, which of course are important, but also for your skin and your hair, for longevity, and also apparently for your mental state. So if you want to have a calm mental state, they say that you have to start getting rid of coffee and sugar. I'm never going to get rid of coffee, but instead of like having to completely change the entire way that I live, instead I'm just trying to get replace things like with sugar with something like a little bit more healthy. So there are a lot of these foods in Japan. So for example, umeboshi is one of those things that not everybody likes, and I understand that, but it's one of those things that's extremely good for your tummy. And other foods like, well, just in the sense that, well, someone else would be eating yogurt over abroad. Over here, we can get things like miso, and we can get amazake, which is a similar kind of a fermented food. And now, because I'm trying to cultivate um, a sense of stoicism, so I'm forcing myself to eat natto every single day, little bitty pieces. But I am actually doing this, and I absolutely despise it. But it's going to be good for me, and I know that it's necessary, and it's probably the healthiest food on the planet. I did a lot of research into it, and this is amazing superfood. So it is. I think of it as medicine, and I gulp it down. But
Yeah.
yes,
I
it's one of
I
those things.
I love your list because it's also all plant-based vegan and it's all traditional Japanese. I had beautiful amazake, homemade amazake yesterday on Miyajima Island, and she made it warm. And she said there's no sugar in it, but it was very sweet naturally. She put grated ginger on the top. It was so good.
So that's good.
I saw you also
Yeah, those.
introduce dobin mushi.
Oh yes, gobi mushi. I love gobi mushi. Okay, it doesn't look like much because it's kind of a broth, really. It's a broth with mushrooms, but Japan has some wonderful mushrooms. You know, the matsutake. 日本のその、あの、竹、松茸、そういうの話なんですけど、there's a lot of mushrooms which you can get in Japan, which have a wonderful scent, and it's very delicate a scent. So if you just eat it, it's just gone in a second. But dogi mushi, what you do is you put the take or matsutake inside of the pot, so that the entire every time you take a little sip, you get a whole like nose full of this mushroom smell. It's so wonderful this time of year. It has to be completely fresh. And you can add sake to it if you want to. You can add sudachi. You can put sudachi juice inside of it to make it really nice. So yeah, it's something that you should enjoy while you're here during the autumn. It's so wonderful. Oishi.
Yeah. And it's so warming. And I love it looks like a teapot that you serve it in and then pour the soup out and then eat out the vegetables at the end. Such a nice display for yourself, presenting yourself with beautiful food in a beautiful way. I love that.
I do think that everything that you're supposed to, you know, I remember when I was growing up as a kid that sometimes you'll have some beautiful food and sometimes you'll go to a nice restaurant and enjoy it. But on the everyday, in my everyday life, it wasn't ceremonious, you know, food. It was just like eat, fill the stomach, that's it. You know, and there's nothing wrong with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I think they're wonderful. But it's like as you get older, it's like you you have finally the yoyu, they say in Japanese. You have the time and hopefully the money a little bit more than you did when you were 12 to enjoy your meals. So you might as well enjoy something. It doesn't have to be expensive, but it should be something that you can really you can really enjoy. You know, something that can really you can play with the flavor of it. You can try things that are new. You can enjoy the seasons, and I don't know. There's so much opportunity to do that here in Japan that it really makes me happy that I've come here.
That's great. And I think one of the things that makes me feel sad, and I sometimes find myself doing it too, is if you're a stay-at-home housewife or mom, or even working from home, sometimes you'll just stand at the sink and eat so that you don't make more plates to clean up. I've heard this from other people as well, and it's so disappointing, and you're not nourishing yourself visually or emotionally or mentally. You're just what you said. You're just getting nutrition, and so I'm so inspired by your pictures and trying to, even when you're serving yourself, to treat yourself visually and make the food more appealing and wholesome. And it's a good reminder to us all.
It was one. This wasn't particularly Japanese, but my grandmother, she passed away. She was very, very old when she passed away. But she always said that, some people will keep the nice stuff for another day. So they'll keep the nice plates for another day, or they'll keep the nice dress for another time. Or, but she always says that if you are worth using the good plates. Is what she would say. So we have all these things that we're saving for a rainy day, and end up never using. They're sitting there collecting dust. But the fact of the matter is that you are just as important as a person, as a guest, and as anybody else. Is you deserve using good plates, and you deserve that time to enjoy by yourself. Even you deserve to have the cheese over there. If the cheese is over there, you don't have to save it for later. You can have it now because um, that's what you're here for. It's here with you right now because you're supposed to have it, right? So I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit. You know, when we're alive, we don't think, I don't know, we're treating ourselves good enough in some aspects of our life. And when you're rushed, I mean, that's one thing, and you want to have some cup ramen. That's totally cool and stuff. But when you have that time, you might as well spend it on yourself, and it'll make you feel better as a person to 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 be able to appreciate yourself. You don't have to be proud. I'm not talking about being proud or anything like that, but it's just a little bit of self-respect that I think that you deserve to have that time. I would hope
Definitely.
so.
And then if you take care of yourself better, then as a mother or a wife or anyone, you can also take care of other people better. You can take care of your children better. Somebody who was talking about self love and the need of self love gave the analogy of on the airplane. When it's an emergency situation, they always say, put your air mask on first and then help others, right? And I think that that's so true for choosing the right path for you or treating yourself with respect. It helps you then help other people too. I think it's something very easy to forget.
Yeah. I mean, we're taught over our lives to put others first. And that's true. You should always put others first. But on the other hand, you shouldn't necessarily make yourself a victim as a result of it. So the fact that you don't have to either. So it's not a matter of everyone's dying and you have one piece of bread and you'll give it to someone else. That's the way that you should really behave on everyday life. But we're not in that kind of situation. We have nice houses. We have computers to watch these awesome shows on. We have pets. We have kitty cats and all these things. So the fact that we've been given these and we have the time to enjoy them, we really should take the time to enjoy them and appreciate what we have. Otherwise, we're always just going to be rushing around, and all of a sudden you're going to be old, and all of a sudden you're like, I should have had that Dobi Mushi when I could.
Yes,
Now I
definitely.
have it. Now.
Toji has a great comment here. Serving food to the self, good quote, part of the self respect. Indeed, even me, sometimes I just finish my meal quick, like you said, though it's only me. I think it's true, right? When you're just yourself, sometimes you feel like, I'll just eat really quick. It doesn't matter, right? But taking time to be quiet and see something beautiful and savor flavors, it makes a difference, right? uh, let's let's end. We've just got a couple more minutes. I'd love to end with your introduction of hito o tateru.
人を立てる。You'll notice those are newcomers to Japan are going to realize that you're going to have a lot of compliments. People love to compliment each other in Japan, and it's actually quite overwhelming when you come from another country, which I come from America and Chicago. They don't really compliment each other. They have other backhanded ways of doing so. But when you're in Japan, they'll tell you everything. Oh, you're so smart, or you have such nice hair. Oh, you do this so well and that so well, and all these things. And it's quite surprising in the beginning. But eventually, you start, the longer you're here, you realize that this is a very essential part of Japanese society, because it feels really nice to get a compliment. So to feel that way, you want to make other people feel that way too. So when you go out with someone, then you, on purpose, you will not only compliment them, but you'll compliment them behind their back. So if they're sitting over there and they're in earshot, you'll say, "She is so cute. Did you see her dress today?" っていうこととか、あの子本当お服は可愛いですよねとか、丁寧な人ですよねとか、you'll say all these wonderful things about them, knowing that they're there. And to do that makes them feel included. It makes them feel proud. And it also helps them to want to improve themselves as well too. So they're like, "Oh, well, people are talking about me, then I better sit up straight, I better, not, I have a little hair out here." So those little tiny things, it will help someone to just kind of feel better about themselves. And you'll notice that if you'll have like a meeting or something like that, the you have two people who are working together and they're introducing one another, they'll introduce each other in the best possible way. So this is a wonderful producer who's done so and so films, and he has a really good taste for this, this, and that. He's an amazing person, is what they'll say about each other, right? So this is an essential part of conversation, especially if you're in a place where no one really knows each other. So you get a lot of that at that point. So that's something that I think that people really need to give each other more compliments, and there's more opportunity to do that. Well, there's actually a word for that in Japanese, and that's hito tateru. So to compliment someone socially in that kind of settings.
I love that. And I agree 100%. We need to praise other people, not only to them directly, but also in front of others as a way of introducing them and supporting them. And I love that concept. I have a funny story from when I first came to Japan, and people were always giving me compliments. And so one of the first Japanese words I learned is gomasuri, you're just grinding the sesame. But I was learning Japanese, so I would quite often get that mistake. I would make that mistake when I was trying. And so someone would say, "Oh, you're so beautiful," or "Aren't you smart," or something. And I would say, "Gomi suru." You're, you're making garbage, I would say. And then they would look really horrified. And I would like, did I say that wrong? Yeah.
I know you got her. She got it. Go that's polishing the apple. So that's like someone's going to give you a good grade, and therefore you give lots of compliments to the teacher. That's not exactly the same as hito tateru.
No.
That's you want something in return for that. That's why it's called gomasu.
Yeah.
Gomisuru, I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life.
So yeah, that's a mistake you don't want to make. You're trying to be polite and say don't, no more compliments, but you're saying you're making trash. What's up with the What's up with the trash?
That's really cute. I love those little linguistic hiccups you have, when you're first learning a language. And the Japanese are really nice about it, so they'll giggle to themselves and they're like, "Oh," but they won't, they won't attack you for it.
Yeah.
So I always love that about that.
That's so nice.
Study.
So that's a nice way to leave our episode today, with a little laugh. And don't beat yourself up if you make mistakes. It happens to all of us. Thank you so much, Kumiko, for joining us today and sharing some of your tea ceremony insights. Thank you always, Paprika-Girl, many, many times explaining and introducing parts of Japanese culture that I have never experienced before. It's a real insight. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for your wonderful comments and questions today. Toji says, thank you very much for the valuable talk today. It's opened another perspective on serving food for myself and the value of hito tatate, as a part of culture, that actually as part of supporting others. Thank you so much. Thank you. What a wonderful comment.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and please treat yourself well. I think that's a nice, and others. Talk nicely about others. What nice lessons from today. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Take care of yourself. Bye.